Horizontal asymptotes. Okay, vertical and horizontal asymptotes. All right, we have 11:01. Okay, so we got half an hour. All right, vertical and horizontal asymptote. Okay, first of all, what is an asymptote? Anybody in here know what? Tell me what an asymptote is. Brett, you know what it is?
No.
Amy, go.
Is it on a graph? Is it something on a graph?
I remember learning.
Okay, it's something on a graph. What is it?
Is it the line dividing the quadratic equation?
Well, it's not necessarily in the middle. It's not necessarily a line that divides something. It's kind of like a boundary line. It doesn't have to be one line. You may have 3 or 4 asymptotes in your graph. It's a boundary line where your graph will approach it, close, but will never touch it and will never cross it. It's very similar to if you're doing a number line in 2 dimensions. You have an open circle. Your line will come approach it like we're doing less than greater than. It will approach a number, but it will never get to that number. Same thing for asymptotes, except we're working on vertical asymptotes and horizontal asymptotes. Okay? Whereas your graph will approach it for infinity, but it will never touch it and can never cross it.
This is the one like with the curves and stuff?
Well, it can have curves, right? We're going to have a lot of curves in our graph. But the vertical lines and horizontal lines, of course, just be straight lines. Okay? So, vertical is a lot easier than horizontal. So we're going to look at vertical first. Okay? Y equals, here's my function. Y equals x squared plus 2x divided by x squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay? If we're going to find the vertical asymptote, okay, first thing, we set denominator equal to 0 and solve. We set denominator equal to 0 and solve. When was the last time we set the denominator equal to 0? What were we finding when the last time we did that?
We were finding
Solutions to
for x.
Wait.
When we found the domain of fraction, or we found the domain of a problem.
What's
We
the
found the
last
domain of it was the last time we set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. Right? Just the denominator. So, we got to set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. If we do that, how do I solve for a quadratic equation that's set equal to 0?
Break it down.
We got to break it down. We factor it down. 2 binomials. This should be easy for us considering we've been doing this a bunch lately. X and x, plus and minus. I know that because my last term is negative. What factors of 6 when I subtract will give me 5?
3 and 2.
6 and 1. Which one's got to be positive?
1.
The 1. Very good. Alright, so I know my vertical asymptote are going to be when x equals -1 and when x equals 6. So if I had a graph, let's just go to this line here. We're going to go to this graph really quick and find it. There you go. My computer is so slow. Alright, so here we have my graph here. Okay, so if I had, again, what were my vertical asymptotes I said? X equals a -1 and x equals 6. Okay, so I got -1. It's a vertical line, so we know it goes up and down. It goes through the vertical axis. It's always a dotted line on our graph. And you have to draw your asymptotes on your graph. X equals 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Alright? Now, I'm not saying this is what the graph looks like. I'm just going to show you examples of how your graph could look. Alright? So if these were my asymptotes, might have a graph that comes up here like this, and we go out here like this. It might be something that comes down and approaches like this. And remember, it's going to approach it for infinity, but it will never touch it, never cross it. You might have something in the middle that comes up here like this, or something that might come down here like this. Alright? Maybe something on this side might do something else where it just comes down and then would be, it all depends. I don't know. Those are different things that it might possibly look like. Okay? So if you have asymptotes, you're going to have breaks in your graph because you can't touch it, it can't cross it. Alright? Does that make sense to everybody? We're talking about asymptotes? Alright, so far. That's what those asymptotes there would look like. Right? Vertical asymptotes are a lot easier than horizontal. And horizontal aren't really hard, it just take some memorization or some other stuff. So, let's look at that. That's vertical, that's it. You say your denominator equals 0, you solve. That's vertical.
It's like the Bobo bun.
If you remember that.
Is that,
No,
is that
Bobo
what
bun
this
needs
is?
to
though?
be
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm not gonna teach that. If you remember it, know how to use it, fantastic. I'm not gonna teach it that way. Alright, so, here we go. Horizontal asymptote. There's 4 things or 3 things about the horizontal asymptote you need to remember. Okay? First of all, for your function, for horizontal asymptote, you have to remember this. Y equals P of x divided by Q of x. P of x divided by Q of x. Your denominator will always be Q of x. Your numerator will always be P of x. And when they're talking about P of x and Q of x, they're talking about the degree. And we say degree of a polynomial, we're talking about the what?
The greatest exponent.
The greatest exponent. Okay? I'm not going to write the degree of P of x out every time, but every time you see P of x and Q of x, you know we're talking about the degree.
Did you say horizontal asymptote?
This is for horizontal. So
Horizontal.
you've already done your vertical. This is horizontal. Okay? This is our horizontal stuff now. Alright? So every time you see P of x and Q of x, you're talking about the degree of P of x, the degree of Q of x. Alright? Okay? Here's my example over here. You know what, we'll do examples later. We're going to come over here, we're going to do all the possibilities first. Alright? Number 1. If P of x is less than Q of x. Okay, now remember, again, I'm talking about my degree. If my degree of P of x is less than my degree of Q of x, then my horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. Y equals 0. Okay, so if your degree of P of x is less than the degree of Q of x, y equals 0. If your asymptote is y equals 0, where will your boundary line actually lie on your graph?
0.
Which say?
0.
Just not 0, remember it's a line.
The origin.
It's going to go through the origin, but where?
0, 0.
It's going to be y equals. What kind of line is y equals?
Horizontal.
Horizontal. So if it goes through the origin and it's horizontal, it's actually going to be on the x-axis. Very good. Your boundary line will actually be the x-axis, so you got to remember that, okay? Number 2, if P of x is greater than Q of x, there is none. No horizontal asymptote. There is none. So if your degree of P of x is greater than the degree of Q of x, there is no horizontal asymptote. Okay, seems pretty simple. Last one, number 3. What's my other option? If what?
They equal each other.
Okay. If P of x equals Q of x, then I have a little side note down here. This is part A. If P of x equals Q of x, then your asymptote's going to be y equals the leading coefficient of P of x divided by your leading coefficient of Q of x. So if the degrees equal each other, we're going to take the leading coefficient, and the leading coefficient again is what? My number that's in front of my variable that has the biggest exponent or has the degree. Okay? So we're going to take the leading coefficient of P of x divided by the leading coefficient of Q of x. That's my horizontal asymptote, if the degrees are equal. Alright? So let's look at 3 examples here. I've got 3x to the 4th minus 6 divided by x squared plus 8. Okay? Horizontal asymptote. What would it equal? The degree of P of x is what?
Greater.
Greater than the degree of Q of x, so therefore I have none. I have no horizontal asymptote. If you know those 3 things, these 3 things will tell you everything. Alright, here we go. Let's look at this one. We got 4x squared minus 8 divided by 2x squared plus 2. Here, my degree of P of X equals my degree of Q of X. So my horizontal asymptote is going to equal Y equals my leading coefficient divided by my leading coefficient. So that would be 2. Very good. So my horizontal asymptote, that would be Y equals 2. So I'd go to Y equals 2, it'd be a horizontal line, and that would be another asymptote. Okay, last situation. I got x plus 6 divided by x squared. My degree of P of X is less than my degree of Q of X, so therefore my horizontal asymptote is
0.
Y equals 0.
Is there gonna be a B part to 3?
No.
Oh, okay. So why would we put A?
Don't
Because I
overthink
needed
it.
something that was off of 3, but I couldn't include it as 3.
Okay.
What should have I put there? What would you
You should just
recommend?
put, like, nothing.
Really?
Like,
You
no
never
A.
seen like notes when you're like writing a research paper and you got a thing here like
Yeah.
1